Second Vatican Council. The last session, I was in 1965. It ended on December 8th of 1965. So that was but that's when I got to know Ratzinger, who later became Pope Benedict. Cardinal Ratzinger, at that time Joseph Ratzinger, he was a well-known theologian. He wasn't as famous as some of the other ones, but they had, the bishops were on these bleachers, so to speak. Each had a desk and so on.
Sure.
In the aula there were, 4,000 bishops, and they were by seniority. They sat by seniority. But up above they had like balconies, and on this side they had the periti, they called them, the experts that were, the cardinals and some of the bishops brought their own experts with them, and then they had experts for the whole council that were, and then on this side they had observers from all the different religions and sects and organizations and stuff, observing on that side above, and this was the periti there. Ratzinger began as a peritus for Cardinal Frings from Cologne, and then he was co-opted as a peritus for the entire council. And so I knew him then, and then of course I knew him as the Archbishop of Munich. He was named that by John Paul II, and then he was named the prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith.
Right.
And so I knew him quite well because I was working in the Holy See at that time. Panzer is the German word for a tank, armored tank.
Sure.
And so they called him the Panzer Cardinal, but it was completely slanderous. He wasn't at all that way. His personality was a completely different one. He was completely different, very extremely erudite and wonderful when it came to theological research and historic theological research. I'd say he was an expert in that area all the way. And I think that's what impressed the Council Fathers in the Second Vatican Council, that he was able to, because a lot of, I guess, incorrect information, people were trying to, had different agendas, and they were trying to promote these agendas by claiming this and that, and he refuted in many ways some of these erroneous ideas. The Council of Trent didn't really say that, but it did, and he was able to contradict those who would say such things. Our discussions were mostly, well, sometimes in English, sometimes in German, whatever suited him. He had very good English and so on, and he was amused. When I learned German in Milwaukee, it was with a Bavarian accent, and he was from Bavaria, and so he appreciated my crummy accent, which I've largely forgotten now. But anyway, so but we got on quite well.
Yeah. And
he was always very kind and deferential to me, and I was awed sometimes for his asking my advice. He asked me to translate the Compendium of the Catholic Church from Italian and Latin and French into English, which I did, and he sent me a very nice congratulatory letter for that work, which I framed. I have it at home. But anyway, but he and we got on quite well. He would be, he was always differential. He was a very, contrary to some of the slanderous things that were said about him, he wasn't at all bossy or arrogant or anything. He was always wanted to listen. He'd ask my advice. I was deeply flattered to have the Pope ask the advice of somebody who was nobody about issues. What do you think about this? What would you do? We would wouldn't always take my advice, but he would ask for it, and I was honored and flattered to be able to give it to him.